The Valerian sky was on fire. Flames streaked through the violet clouds as entire cities were torn apart by energy storms. Towers that once scraped the heavens now fell like ash, crashing into the oceans below. The air shimmered with static and fear. Across the Valerian system, distress beacons screamed in all frequencies, but none answered. In the command citadel above Valerian Prime, Admiral Theranai stood before a cracked holographic map. It flickered, red dots vanishing one by one, each marking a fallen fleet, a dead world, a broken promise. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Status of the defense line. A junior officer, his scales burned from plasma fire, turned to her. "Gone, Admiral. The Vexar Dominion has reached the capital orbit." Outside the viewing window, flashes of light lit up space like dying stars. The Valerian defense fleet, once proud and unchallenged, was being shredded by invisible weapons. The Vexar Dominion didn't come for conquest. They came to erase. Theranai clenched her clawed hands. "We cannot win this." "Then what are your orders?" asked the officer, his voice breaking. She looked at the ruined world below, her people running, screaming, disappearing beneath fire and thunder. For 10,000 years, the Valerians had ruled with arrogance, calling themselves the keepers of order, the architects of civilization. They had ignored the pleas of weaker species, dismissed humanity as young savages. Now they were the ones begging. "Open the long-range beacon," she said. "All frequencies." "Admiral, that's desperate." "I am desperate." The officer hesitated, then pressed the control. The comms array powered up with a deep, echoing hum. Across the stars the message spread. A cry of agony carried through subspace. Theranai leaned close to the microphone, her voice hollow but fierce. "This is Admiral Theranai of the Valerian Defense Command. To any species who can hear this transmission, our worlds are falling. The Vexar Dominion has unleashed something we cannot fight. We seek aid, any aid. To whoever listens, we are dying," Static answered. Then silence. She closed her eyes. So be it. But light years away on the frozen moon Titan, a young human operator named Lieutenant Maria Chen heard something strange in the static. The Earth Titan relay station was a quiet post, mostly automated, manned by a handful of bored personnel. They monitored deep space signals, most of them junk, echoes from long-dead civilizations. Maria was half asleep when her console flashed red. Unknown transmission detected. Origin Valerian system. Her eyes widened. Valerian. She hadn't heard that name in years, not since Earth's ambassadors were laughed out of their trade summit. The Valerians had called humanity barely civilized apes. She replayed the message, watching the screen tremble with distortion. The voice was raw, breaking. "We seek aid. Any aid." Maria sat frozen. Then she whispered, "They're begging." She forwarded the transmission to United Command on Earth. Within minutes, alarms echoed across the deep space network. The message spread through every satellite, every defense hub, every government feed. By sunrise, Earth was awake. In the war room beneath Geneva, the United Command Council gathered. Generals, admirals, and world leaders watched the holographic projection of Theranai's message replay again and again. General Rachel Cortez, commander of the Earth Defense Fleet, stood silently as others debated. "They mocked us for decades," said one official. "Now they come crawling for help?" "They're being annihilated," another argued. "If we do nothing, we let billions die." Cortez's voice cut through the noise. "They're not asking for mercy. They're asking for survival. And if the Vexar Dominion can destroy them, what happens when they reach us?" The room fell silent. She turned to the Council's holographic table, where the image of burning Valerian Prime spun slowly. "We respond," she said, "not because they deserve it, but because humanity remembers what it means to be helpless." The President of United Earth, Elias Ward, leaned forward. "And if this brings war to our doorstep?" Cortez didn't flinch. "Then we'll meet it head-on. The Valerians may have forgotten who we are. The galaxy hasn't seen the full strength of Earth yet." For a moment no one spoke. Then Ward nodded slowly. "Prepare the fleet." Within hours, Earth's skies filled with thunder. From the shipyards over Luna, Mars, and Europa, the great fleets of humanity came alive. Engines ignited, lighting the blackness with burning blue trails. Massive dreadnoughts lifted from orbit. Steel Titans named Courage, Resolve, and Vigilance. Civilian ships were converted for rescue operations. Medical carriers loaded supplies. the Interstellar Marine Corps armed for combat, their dropships ready for atmospheric entry. In the Titan outpost, Maria watched in awe as news feeds exploded with the announcement, Earth responds to alien distress signal. Operation Dawnfire initiated. Admiral Cortez stood on the bridge of the flagship USS Aegis, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. Set course for Valerian Prime, she ordered. Aye, Admiral. Fleet ready for jump in 30 seconds. She looked out one last time at Earth, its oceans gleaming under sunlight, the cradle of humankind. Behind her, an officer asked quietly, "Do you think they'll remember our kindness?" Cortez didn't look away from the stars. "No," she said, "but they'll remember our arrival." The countdown began. 5, 4, 3. Across the solar system, every human ship aligned its jump drives. The sky shimmered with light. 2, 1. Jump! In a flash of brilliance, humanity vanished into the dark. The last thing left behind was the fading blue glow of Earth, small, distant, and unstoppable. The Valerians had asked for help. They had no idea what was coming. The jump lanes tore open across the darkness of space. 1,000 human warships emerged from hyperspace in flashes of blue fire, their arrival shaking the stars themselves. To the stunned Valerian observers, it looked like a storm of light had erupted at the edge of their dying world. On the main viewing deck of the Valerian Command Citadel, Admiral Theranai stared in disbelief. Moments ago, their last defense fleet had fallen. Now her sensors screamed with new signals, hundreds, no thousands of ships forming into perfect battle formations. "Identify those signatures," she demanded. "Are they Vexar reinforcements?" The officer beside her blinked in shock. "No, Admiral. They're human. All of them." Theranai's throat went dry. "That cannot be. The humans have this many ships." The Valerians had always seen Earth as a small power, an upstart species barely out of their own solar system. But what appeared before them was not a small defense group. It was an armada that covered the horizon. Massive dreadnoughts with rotating gravity rings, stealth cruisers gliding like black knives, medical ships trailing flocks of drones, and carriers the size of floating cities. Their hulls glowed with the insignia of a united Earth, the blue and white crest of the United Command. "Incoming transmission," said the comms officer. Visual confirmed. "It's them." The holographic screen flickered, and the image of Admiral Rachel Cortez appeared, calm, focused, her dark uniform reflecting the soft light of her command bridge. "To Admiral Theranai of the Valerian Command," Cortez said, her voice steady. "This is Admiral Cortez of the United Earth Fleet. We received your distress signal. We're here to assist." For several seconds, Theranai said nothing. The command room was silent, except for the crackle of burning cities echoing through distant channels. "You've answered," Theranai finally whispered. "We didn't expect—" Cortez interrupted softly. "Expectations don't save lives, Admiral. We don't forget what it feels like to fight alone." She turned slightly, giving an order to her crew. "Deploy orbital shields and begin civilian extractions. The first medical squadrons are en route." In orbit, dozens of sleek human ships released swarms of drones that ignited into glowing blue domes over the planet's surface. For the first time in weeks, Valerian Prime stopped burning. The protective field shimmered like rain over fire. "They're shielding our cities," a Valerian officer whispered, awe in his voice. "They came for us." "Not just came," another said quietly. "They brought everything." The Valerians watched as massive human freighters dropped atmospheric pods filled with water and supplies. Rescue teams descended into ruined cities, carrying the wounded to orbit. Even the most hardened Valerian soldiers were stunned by the human speed, their coordination, their sheer determination. On the flagship USS Aegis, Cortez stood surrounded by holographic tactical maps. Red enemy signatures dotted the screen. Vexar fleets regrouping at the system's edge. "They're not retreating," said her second-in-command, Commander Brooks. "They're gathering for airstrike." Cortez nodded slowly. They expected a dying species. "Let's show them they were wrong." She turned to her communications officer. "Open a channel to all fleets." Across space, the voice of Admiral Cortez echoed through every ship. "This is Admiral Cortez to all human vessels. The Valerians once stood alone, no longer. Today we fight not for power, but for the survival of every world that still believes in life. Hold formation, protect the civilians, and remember, Earth stands with Valerian. A roar of acknowledgement filled the comms. On the Valerian bridge, Theranai felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. The humans weren't just soldiers. They were a storm of unity, each ship a symbol of a world that refused to turn away from suffering. She turned to her officers. "Prepare coordination. We will fight beside them." One young Valerian looked up at her. "Admiral, after all we said about them, do you think they'll forgive us?" Theranai stared at the human fleet now orbiting her planet. So many ships it looked like a metal ocean surrounding a dying world. "Forgiveness isn't what they came for," she said quietly. "They came because it was right." Outside, the Vexar Dominion appeared again, massive black ships sliding from hyperspace like shadows. Their weapons charged, lighting the void with crimson fire. Cortez's eyes narrowed. "Enemy contact. Fleet Alpha and Bravo. Frontline intercept. All carriers, launch squadrons." The order spread instantly. Human fighters burst from their hangars in waves, streaking toward the Vexar formation. The first clash was brutal. Laser fire and plasma streams collided in blinding light. But unlike the Valerians, humanity didn't retreat. They advanced. Human destroyers broke formation to lure the enemy, baiting their shots before unleashing EMP detonations that tore through Vexar shields. The Valerians watched from orbit, their disbelief growing with every moment. These humans didn't fight like the other species. They didn't wait, didn't plead, didn't hesitate. They fought with precision, rage, and purpose, as if every battle was personal. "Admiral Cortez," Theranai said over the joint comm line, "your tactics, they're unpredictable." Cortez gave a faint smile. "That's what happens when you underestimate us." Below them, the battle raged. Human medships continued evacuations, even while enemy fire streaked past. The Earth fleet didn't just destroy, they protected. They built safety amid chaos. Hours later, the Vexar withdrew, their losses severe. The Valerian cities still burned, but the skies were no longer filled with death. Theranai stood by the observation window, watching as human repair drones began reconstructing fallen towers. The once proud admiral felt something she had never felt before: humility. "They came with everything," she whispered. On the USS Aegis, Cortez looked over her tactical board, eyes sharp but calm. "This is only the beginning," she said to her crew. "The Dominion won't stop. Neither will we." She turned toward the stars where the enemy had fled. "Prepare for Phase 2. Humanity doesn't arrive halfway." The fleet engines rumbled to life again, filling the void with light. Earth had answered the call, and the galaxy would never be the same. The darkness beyond Valerian Prime stirred again. From the edge of the system, the Vexar Dominion returned, stronger, colder, angrier. Their ships were black wedges of death, moving in eerie silence, thousands of them, each one pulsing with a crimson core. They were not retreating. They had regrouped. The brief silence after humanity's arrival was over. The storm was coming. On the flagship USS Aegis, Admiral Rachel Cortez watched the tactical display flicker with new enemy signatures. "They're advancing," said Commander Brooks grimly. "Vexar numbers exceed projections, at least 4 times our fleet strength." Cortez's face remained calm. "Let them come. We'll show them how Earth fights." Down on Valerian Prime, Admiral Theranai listened to the human communications feed. The sound was unlike any she had heard before. Calm voices under pressure. Commands executed instantly. No hesitation, no panic. Human battle chatter was efficient, almost surgical. It unnerved her. It fascinated her. "They sound like they've done this 1,000 times, she muttered. Her aide nodded. "Maybe they have, Admiral." In orbit, the Vexar fleet broke into formation. Massive triangular carriers led the vanguard, flanked by smaller hunter ships that moved like predators. The Vexar were ancient conquerors, used to crushing lesser races within hours. But this time the prey had teeth. Cortez stood at the center of her bridge, her uniform spotless, her eyes reflecting the burning light of enemy engines. Fleet Alpha, form a spearhead. Beta, hold defensive perimeter. Gamma and Delta, prepare for flanking maneuvers. The bridge crew moved with practiced unity. Dozens of captains repeated her commands across subchannels. Human ships shifted into a diamond formation, sleek and sharp, their hulls glowing with blue plasma edges. "They're pushing straight toward us," Brooks said. "They're confident." Cortez's tone was ice. Confidence fades fast under fire. Prepare the trap. The first Vexar salvo hit like thunder. Plasma beams tore through space, slamming into human shields. Blue light rippled across the fleet as shields held. Human counterfire lit up the darkness. Railguns, ion cannons, and guided kinetic slugs that moved faster than light could catch. Explosions erupted across the Vexar front. 3 of their destroyers were gone, before they even realized the humans had fired back. On the Valerian command bridge, officers gasped. "Their weapons. They're so precise," one said. "Their coordination. It's like one mind." Theranai leaned closer to the display, awe mixing with guilt. These were the same beings her people once called primitive. "No," she whispered. "It's like one heart." The Vexar retaliated with fury. Swarms of red drones poured from their ships, spinning webs of plasma mines. Human fighters countered instantly, diving into the swarm, detonating EMP bursts that turned the enemy drones into drifting ash. Every loss the Vexar inflicted, the humans returned tenfold. On the Aegis, Cortez issued a new order. "Deploy the decoys. Let's draw them in." Moments later, a dozen small human frigates broke from formation, charging straight at the largest Vexar carrier. The alien flagship opened fire, laughing at the foolishness. Then the human frigates exploded, controlled detonations, sending out shockwaves of interference that blinded enemy sensors. Hidden beneath the chaos, a human stealth cruiser emerged and fired 2 kinetic rods directly into the Vexar command ship's core. The detonation split the enemy flagship in half. The entire battlefield paused for one heartbeat. The impossible had happened. The Valerians watched the Vexar's flagship die in silence. Theranai felt her chest tighten. They destroyed it. With strategy, not size. The humans didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. They simply moved on to the next target. Down on Valerian Prime, the civilians watching from bunkers wept as human medships descended again. They came not just with weapons, but with doctors, engineers, supplies. They gave water to the dying and light to the hopeless. In one ruined district, a Valerian child stared up as a human soldier lifted her from the rubble. "You're safe now," he said softly, handing her a ration bar. "We've got you." News of humanity's actions spread through Valerian networks like wildfire. The same race once mocked for their weakness now stood as protectors of an empire older than themselves. But above all this courage, a shadow lingered. Deep within the Vexar fleet, a transmission pulsed through encrypted channels. Her voice, cold and mechanical, spoke from the void. "If Earth stands with them, then Earth will fall with them." The Vexar leader, a figure wrapped in black light, watched the battle feed. "The humans are dangerous," he hissed. "They fight with emotion. It makes them unpredictable." "Shall we retreat, Exalted One?" asked a subordinate. "Retreat?" The leader spat. "No, let them have this victory. We will study them. We will learn how they bleed." The signal ended. On the Aegis, Cortez stared into the darkness where the enemy had vanished. "They'll be back," Brooks said. "Yes," she replied quietly. "And next time they'll come prepared." She turned to the tactical display, studying the patterns, the wreckage, the faint trails of the fleeing Vexar. "So will we." Down below, Theranai sent a transmission of gratitude to the human fleet, her voice trembling. "Admiral Cortez, on behalf of the Valerian people, thank you." Cortez's response came seconds later, calm and simple. "Don't thank us yet, Admiral. This war's only begun." Outside, the human fleet moved into defensive orbit, their ships gleaming like stars reborn. The Valerian system was safe for now. But in the dark edges of the galaxy, something else had awakened, watching, calculating. The Vexar Dominion had underestimated humanity once. They would not make that mistake again. The humans had come with compassion and fury, and the galaxy was beginning to understand a terrible truth. When humanity answered a call for help, they never came halfway. They brought the full weight of Earth itself. The aftermath of the battle left the stars scarred. Fragments of Vexar ships drifted like frozen corpses in the void, while human recovery drones zipped between wrecks, collecting survivors and data. The silence after chaos was almost haunting. On the bridge of the USS Aegis, Admiral Rachel Cortez stood at the observation window, hands clasped behind her back. The blue light of Valerian Prime glowed below, its city still burning but alive. Commander Brooks approached quietly. "Damage report complete. We lost 31 ships, most from Alpha Fleet, Beta and Gamma sustained moderate damage. Civilian casualties still counting. Cortez nodded slowly. And the Vexar? Retreated beyond sensor range, but they'll return stronger. She exhaled, her breath misting against the cold glass. Then we won't wait for them to choose the next battlefield. She turned sharply. Summon the War Council. Minutes later, the command deck filled with officers, holograms, and Valerian representatives. Theranai joined via hololink, her figure flickering amid the blue light. She looked tired, humbled. Cortez wasted no time. We've seen what they can do. Their ships rely on power cores shielded by frequency-based barriers. Standard plasma fire barely scratches them. But their systems are vulnerable to electromagnetic interference. That's our opening. A human strategist, Colonel Vega, spoke next. We've been working on a plan, Operation Emberfall. It's risky but effective. A 3D map projected above the table, showing the Vexar's known positions. Vega continued. We'll use orbital kinetic weapons synchronized with Valerian targeting data. The Valerians lure them into engagement range. Once they're locked in, our orbital rods fall. Gravity does the rest. Theranai blinked. You mean, drop solid metal rods from orbit? Cortez nodded. At Mach 10, they'll hit like small asteroids. The Vexar shields can't absorb that much kinetic energy. The Valerians exchanged uneasy glances. They had never seen such primitive brutality combined with such precision. Theranai's voice trembled slightly. You humans plan to turn space itself into a weapon. Cortez's gaze was steady. We use what we have. We fight to win. There was silence, then Theranai bowed her head. The Valerians will fight beside you. As the council adjourned, Brooks walked beside Cortez. You think they'll trust us now? Cortez smirked faintly. Trust is earned. They'll see soon enough. Later, in the ship's strategy chamber, Cortez reviewed battle logs. Every engagement confirmed one thing. The Vexar were learning. Their attacks were adapting, their tactics shifting faster than expected. Humanity had to strike first, or they'd be crushed by the next wave. Her gaze softened for a moment as she looked at a small hollow picture floating beside her console. A photo of Earth from orbit. Blue, fragile, beautiful. She whispered under her breath, never again. Across the fleet, preparations began. Massive kinetic platforms were constructed in orbit, built from repurposed ship hulls and mining equipment. Every soldier, engineer, and pilot worked without rest. The Valerians watched with growing awe as humans turned wreckage into weapons. They rebuild faster than we thought possible, one Valerian officer said. They rebuild because they have to, another replied quietly. Down on the planet, Valerian civilians helped human medics and engineers restore infrastructure. The tension between species slowly softened into understanding. A Valerian child handed a human soldier a small crystal, a symbol of gratitude. The soldier smiled, placing it on his armor. Thanks, kid. We'll keep you safe. Back aboard the Aegis, the countdown began. Operation Emberfall T-minus 10 minutes, the AI announced. The fleet was ready. Thousands of kinetic rods floated in launch bays, glinting like silver spears. Theranai's voice came through the comm-line. Admiral Cortez, our forces are in position. The Vexar scouts have entered our trap. Copy that, Cortez replied. Hold the line until the signal. Outside, the void shimmered as the enemy fleet arrived, black silhouettes emerging from hyperspace like ghosts. They advanced, confident after their retreat, unaware that the very orbit above them was armed with death. On her bridge, Cortez raised her hand. All units hold fire. Let them come closer. The Vexar formation closed in, scanning for weakness. They think we're broken, Brooks said. Let them. Cortez's eyes never left the screen. Signal the strike teams. Begin Emberfall. The command echoed through every human ship. In the silence that followed, thousands of metallic rods detached from orbital platforms and began to fall. They cut through the atmosphere like silver rain, silent and invisible until the final seconds. Then came the impact. The sky lit up like a second sun. Shock waves ripped through enemy formations. Massive detonations tore the Vexar carriers apart, their shields collapsing under the sheer kinetic force. Valerian soldiers on the ground watched in stunned silence as streaks of light fell across the sky, destroying their enemies in moments. By the stars, one whispered. They're turning the heavens into fire. On the Aegis, Cortez watched the destruction unfold. Phase 2, clean-up strike. All units advance. Human destroyers and Valerian cruisers surged forward, cutting through the disoriented enemy. It was over within minutes. The Vexar fleet disintegrated into burning fragments. Cheers erupted through the comm lines, but Cortez didn't smile. Her gaze stayed fixed on the holographic map. "It worked," Brooks said. "We broke them." "No," Cortez said quietly. "We hurt them. There's a difference." She turned toward the stars, her expression unreadable. "They'll come back. And next time they'll bring something worse." Far beyond the system, in the dark corners of the galaxy, deep transmissions pulsed. The Vexar were not defeated. They were calling for their master. And soon humanity would learn the truth about the real enemy, the one hidden behind the Dominion. Cortez looked at her officers. "Enjoy this moment," she said softly. "It might be the last victory before the storm." The fleet drifted in silence, their engines glowing faintly against the darkness. Humanity had proven its strength, its unity, and its resolve. But in the cold void beyond, something vast and ancient had started to awaken. The Harbinger drifted from the veil like a shadow that swallowed light. Its hull rippled with shifting patterns, like the skin of a living beast. Every sensor across the Allied fleet screamed with alerts. On the bridge of the USS Aegis, Admiral Rachel Cortez stared at the readings. "Energy output is off the charts," reported Commander Brooks. "If that thing fires, entire systems could vanish." Cortez's expression didn't change. "Then we don't let it fire." Across the stars, Earth's fleets gathered, massive carriers, dreadnoughts, and strike cruisers, forming into perfect formation. The Valerian ascendancy, still rebuilding from their earlier devastation, aligned their silver ships alongside human vessels. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's divided civilizations stood as one. Theranai's voice echoed across the joint frequency. "We fight not as Valerians or humans, but as survivors." Cortez nodded silently. "All ships, arm weapons. Defensive grids active." Suddenly the Harbinger moved. Without warning, a ripple of dark energy expanded from its core, washing across space. Dozens of ships flickered, their systems shutting down as if life itself had been drained from them. "EMP field?" Brooks shouted. "No, something worse." Scientists aboard the ISS Horizon scrambled through data. "It's rewriting molecular structure," one cried. "It's turning matter to energy." Cortez barked orders. "Activate quantum shields now!" The shields flared to life, shimmering blue as the wave passed. Human ships held, but half the Valerian fleet disintegrated into dust. Theranai watched in horror from her command ship. "Our shields." "Useless," she whispered. "Their weapon doesn't just destroy, it unravels reality." In response, the humans counterattacked. Hundreds of missiles streaked toward the Harbinger, followed by beams of plasma and railgun fire. Explosions bloomed across its surface, but when the light faded, the monster still moved unharmed. "Direct hits, no damage," Brooks shouted. "Its armor's absorbing everything." Cortez clenched her jaw. "It's learning. Every second we fight, it's adapting." Meanwhile, aboard a stealth frigate near the nebula's edge, Lieutenant Arya Lang discovered something strange. The Harbinger emitted a secondary frequency, a signal that matched ancient Vexar code. She transmitted the data back to the Aegis. "Admiral, it's controlling them," she said. "The Dominion built the Vexar as slaves." Cortez froze. "Can we use that signal against it?" Arya hesitated. "Maybe. If we amplify and invert the frequency, we could overload its control core, but we'd need to get inside the ship." Cortez turned to Brooks. "Prep infiltration teams." "You can't be serious," Brooks said. "That's a death sentence." "So is waiting." Moments later, the USS Revenant, a stealth corvette, detached from formation. Aboard it was a mixed human-Valerian team, led by Captain Elias Grant's protégé, Lieutenant Rhea Solis. She carried the encryption device that could potentially disable the Harbinger's core. "If this works," she told her team, "we buy everyone time. If it doesn't, we make it count." As the Revenant closed in, Cortez ordered the fleets forward. "Draw its attention." Battles erupted across the void. Human destroyers weaved through waves of plasma fire, their cannons blazing. Valerian fighters darted between enemy beams, sacrificing themselves to keep the Harbinger's focus away from the Revenant. The colossal ship unleashed its true weapon. Its core opened like an eye, releasing a beam that carved through entire fleets. Hundreds of ships vanished in a single flash. The shockwave slammed into the Aegis, throwing the crew to the floor. "We've lost the right flank," Brooks yelled. Cortez gripped her chair. "Tell Rhea to move faster." Inside the Harbinger, the Revenant pierced its hull through a maintenance conduit. The team entered a world of impossible geometry, walls pulsing with energy, corridors that twisted like living veins. "It's alive," one Valerian whispered. "No," Rhea said. "It's aware." They reached the central chamber, a massive sphere filled with floating cores of dark light. The Dominion's consciousness pulsed within. Voices whispered in their minds, "You are dust. You are temporary." Rhea planted the device, hands shaking. "Not today." Outside, the Harbinger began charging its weapon again. Cortez saw the readings spike. "All ships, brace!" she shouted. The Revenant's signal flared on the display. "She did it!" Brooks yelled. A bright pulse erupted from the Harbinger's core as the inverted frequency spread through its systems. The massive ship convulsed, energy surging violently. Its hull began to crack, but before it could explode, a deep, resonant voice echoed across every comm frequency. "Your defiance is noted. We are eternal." Then silence. The Harbinger stopped moving, but it didn't die. Instead, it began collapsing inward, folding space around itself. Cortez watched in disbelief. "It's retreating." Theranai's voice came through. "No, it's leaving coordinates." "A path?" On screen, the data formed a single symbol, ancient and universal. A warning. The Dominion wasn't defeated. It was calling others. Cortez whispered. This was just the beginning. The Allied fleets limped away, battered but alive. Half of humanity's ships were gone. Valerian Prime burned once more. In the distance, the Veil Nebula closed behind the retreating Harbinger, leaving only silence. In the aftermath, Cortez stood alone in her quarters, watching the stars. "We fought a god," she said softly. "And we survived," Brooks entered quietly. "At what cost?" Cortez didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the coordinates the Harbinger left behind. They pointed deep beyond the galactic rim, uncharted space. She turned to Brooks. "Prepare the next mission. We're going after them." He blinked. "After what?" "The source," she said. "If the Harbinger was their hand, I want to find the mind that moves it." As the Aegis moved through the void, its engines flaring bright, the camera panned out across the galaxy. Countless wrecks floated in silence, the graves of heroes. Humanity had shown its fire, and now the universe was watching. The galaxy lay bruised and quiet after the Harbinger's retreat. Wreckage drifted through the void. Burned ships, silent signals, shattered pride. But Admiral Rachel Cortez couldn't rest. The coordinates left behind by the Dominion ship haunted every tactical screen aboard the USS Aegis. They pointed toward the edge of mapped space, Sector Null, a region so ancient and unstable that no ship had ever returned from it. Cortez stood before the holographic projection, eyes fixed. "That's where it came from," she said softly. "The Dominion's birthplace." Commander Brooks frowned. "That's suicide, Admiral. Our fleet's in ruins. Half our systems are still crippled." Cortez didn't look away. "And if we wait, they'll come again, but stronger. We can't let them rebuild." On Valerian Prime, Theranai received the same data. Her advisors urged her to focus on defense, to rebuild their shattered world. But her instincts whispered otherwise. She opened a private channel to Cortez. "You're going after them," she said. "You already know that's madness." Cortez's lips tightened. So was standing against the Harbinger. "Yet here we are." There was silence, then Theranai nodded slowly. "Then the Valerian ascendancy will follow." Across human space, preparations began for one final mission, Operation Black Star. The last of Earth's surviving fleets were refitted for deep space endurance. Every engine was tuned to perfection, every ship armed with weapons still in prototype. Humanity was gambling everything on a single strike. 3 weeks later, the Aegis led the combined task force into the dark. Over 200 ships jumped into Sector Null, leaving behind the last glimmer of starlight. The jump was rough. Reality bent and twisted around them. For a moment, it felt like falling through dreams. Then they emerged and silence took over. Before them was a vast expanse of dead stars and broken worlds, planets reduced to skeletons, moons carved hollow. In the distance floated a colossal structure, half ruined but still alive with energy, a machine world the size of a solar system. Brooks whispered, "My God!" Cortez answered, "No, Commander. This is where gods are made." The fleet advanced cautiously. Scanners struggled to read anything. The air, if there was any, was thick with static and whispers. Suddenly the transmissions began again, the same coded voices they'd heard from the Harbinger. "Welcome, children of dust," they said in perfect synchronization. "You have come far." Cortez gritted her teeth. "Identify yourself." The voice replied, "We are the Dominion. We are the architects of order." "You are chaos." The machine world lit up. Massive towers rose from its surface, forming patterns like neural pathways. "They're alive," Theranai gasped through the comm. "The planet, it's one vast mind." Before the humans could react, energy beams lanced outward, slicing through 3 ships instantly. "Evasive maneuvers," Brooks shouted. The fleet scattered, returning fire. But the beams moved with impossible precision, anticipating every move. Cortez slammed her hand on the console. "Target the central nexus. Concentrate all firepower." The space lit up like a sunrise. Dozens of railguns, plasma cannons, and missile salvos converged on the central tower. The blast struck true. Metal cracked, explosions rippled. But the tower reformed itself within seconds, reshaping like liquid steel. "It's regenerating," yelled an engineer. "We can't win this way." Suddenly a new signal broke through the chaos. Lieutenant Rhea Solis's voice, faint but alive. "Admiral, this thing is linked to the Harbinger. If we can disrupt its link, we might shut them both down." "Where are you?" Cortez asked. "Inside the network," Rhea said. "I jacked into the residual code from the Harbinger's remains." "I can see its thoughts, Admiral." "It's afraid." Cortez froze. "Afraid of what?" Rhea hesitated. "Of us." For the first time, Cortez smiled. "Then let's make that fear real." She ordered all ships to channel power into Rhea's signal. Across the fleet, reactors burned at full capacity, channeling data and energy into a single burst. Rhea screamed as the overload surged through her neural link, but she held on. In the machine world's heart, something cracked. The Dominion's voice faltered. "You should not exist." The stars themselves seemed to tremble. Energy arcs leapt between the towers. Theranai's ships poured fire into the breach, widening it until a blinding rift appeared in the planet's core. Cortez shouted, "Now! Fire everything!" Every ship unleashed its arsenal. The explosion was cataclysmic. The entire machine world split apart, light pouring from its wounds. The Dominion's final words echoed across space. "You burn, like the first sun." Then silence. When the light faded, the fleet hung over the shattered remains of the world. It was over, or so they thought. In the aftermath, Rhea's signal vanished. Cortez tried to hail her, but there was no response. Only static. The survivors watched as the fragments of the machine world drifted into darkness. But deep within the debris, hidden behind clouds of plasma, a small orb of light pulsed alive, waiting. Back on the Aegis, Brooks turned to Cortez. "We destroyed their world, Admiral." "No," Cortez said quietly. "We destroyed one piece. The Dominion is a network. Somewhere out there, the rest is waiting." Theranai's voice came through the comm, weary but resolute. "Then we must rebuild, together. Or next time there will be no one left to answer the call." Cortez stared at the stars, the ruins of the machine world fading behind them. "We'll be ready," she whispered. As the fleet turned for home, the camera pulled back, past the wreckage, past the shattered systems, out into the black void beyond the galactic rim. There a cluster of unknown signals flickered to life, forming the same Dominion symbol seen before. It pulsed once, twice, then vanished. Somewhere far away, a voice spoke in the dark. "Humanity burns bright, too bright to ignore." The war wasn't over. It was only waiting to begin again.